It predominantly derives from our ethical screening process, and look, that process is very focused on guiding us to invest in renewable resources. And when you're extracting things from the ground, typically they aren't renewable unless they've got a high ability to be recycled, and the right market incentives are in place that are driving that recycling behaviour. There's no doubt, the resources sector is a challenging one for us, right? It's got a very heavy environmental footprint at the extraction phase. There's a great deal of rehabilitation that has to go on. And then when we look at things like, fossil fuels, well, we just don't invest in fossil fuel companies, right? So that already rules out part of it. You take something like the steel sector. Steel making is a very carbon intensive activity. So where we do get a little bit of exposure to the steel sector is through something like a Sims Group, which is the largest publicly listed metal recycler, and they're doing some really interesting things in that business. And that's a much less carbon intensive process using scrap metal in an electric arc furnace. So that's the way we do get some exposure, but it's not a lot. People shouldn't invest in us for resources. Some of our strategies own Pilbara minerals, so we are interested in some of those transition metals like lithium, where we can get comfortable. The area that we're seeing changes within the materials sector is probably more to do with some of the building materials companies. I mentioned them earlier, companies like Fletcher Building and Boral and CSR, which have come through our ethical process. And another example I just mentioned was Pilbara. But a lot of the resources sector is occupied in Australia by the fossil fuel companies or the big iron ore companies, and they're not companies that make it through our screens at the moment. We're certainly watching with interest at some of the activity, around some of the investments that Fortescue are making. We think have the potential to be quite positive. But at the moment, no, we haven't taken steps to invest in those companies. It is an unashamedly high bar, and one that we've adhered to for a long time. So we are going to be sort of true to that charter, and I think that's what investors should expect from us. One of the companies I did mention was Pilbara Minerals. I think it's reasonably self-evident about the importance of lithium to battery technology. Sims Group, it's a really interesting company. Historically, a heavy sort of industry company that was perceived in that way. A couple of years ago, they really embraced this idea of the circular economy. You've seen them make this investment in recycling waste from the cloud. You're seeing them making this investment in landfill gas, and obviously just their core recycling business, where they've really invested very heavily in upgrading the quality of their scrap, and that's paying them dividends.